Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Magic Arena gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at a Teamer Ramp deck built around Nikya of the Old Ways, a 5 mana 5/5 legendary creature with the drawback of you can't cast non-creature spells, which will definitely influence our deck building decisions. And then the upside is that whenever we tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced, so it essentially doubles up all the mana we can make with our lands, which is a very powerful ability and will include plenty of mana sinks in the deck to take full advantage of all the extra mana that Nikya can provide. And the perfect fit in a creature-only deck like this one is going to be Hydroid Krasis, since with more mana we get to make a bigger Krasis, draw more cards and gain more life, so scales very nicely alongside Nikya, and the first Krasis often draws us into the second Krasis, which is going to be even bigger, so just a great card in this deck, and a nice curve topper to have access to. So let's take a look at our entire deck list, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have the full 4 copies of Llanowar Elves, which is kind of a must-have in any creature ramp deck. Then at 2 mana we also have 4 copies of Incubation Druid to have more mana acceleration, and Druid also has Adapt 3 for 5 mana, so if we have a bit of spare mana, we can sink it into the Druid, turning it into a 3/5, which is a respectable creature that can attack and block. And then if we do top deck something like a Hydroid Krasis, later in the game we can now make 3 mana with the Incubation Druid instead of just 1, so we can make an even bigger Hydroid Krasis, so perfect fit in this deck as well. And then we also have 4 copies of Growth Chamber Guardian, nice 2 mana 2/2 with Adapt 2 for 3 mana. And then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on the Growth Chamber Guardian, we can search our library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, reveal it and put it into our hand. It's also great mana sink. If we have a ton of mana available, we can search up multiple copies of Growth Chamber Guardian and turn them all into 4/4 creatures, and also just a reasonable play on turn 2 that we can make. And then at 3 mana, we've got more ramp in the form of Elvish Rejuvenator, 3 mana for a 1/1, and when the Rejuvenator enters the battlefield, we can look at the top 5 cards of our library and put a land card from among those on the battlefield tapped, and the rest goes on the bottom, so it helps us hit our land drops and ramp us into our more expensive cards, which is when the magic happens. And then we've got 2 copies of Jadelight Ranger as well to help us hit our land drops, 3 mana for a 2/1 that explores twice when she enters the battlefield, so it can help us find more action in the late game, and in the early game maybe help us hit more land drops, so we can make sure we can cast all our spells on curve, or maybe a bit ahead of curve thanks to our mana accelerants. And then at 4 mana, we've got 3 copies of Beast Whisperer, which is another payoff card for only playing creatures in this deck, 4 mana for a 2/3, and then whenever we cast a creature spell, draw a card. So even if the creature gets countered, we still get to draw a card, which is great against control decks. And then we also have 2 copies of Nullhide Ferox, 4 mana for a 6/6 creature with hexproof that has the same drawback as Nikya in that we cannot cast non-creature spells, but in a deck with only creatures that's not actually a drawback. And then for 2 mana, Nullhide Ferox loses all abilities until end of turn, and any player may activate this ability, so we'll remove the hexproof on the Nullhide Ferox, and we'll also remove the drawback of not being able to cast non-creature spells, but in this deck we're never going to activate the Nullhide Ferox's ability ourselves. And then if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes us to discard Nullhide Ferox, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into our graveyard, so a very relevant ability against any discard effects like Thought Erasure or Disinformation Campaign, or even 4 mana Nicol Bolas also makes us discard, so we can put the Nullhide Ferox in play instead, so also something to watch out for. And then at 5 mana, of course, we've got our 4 copies of Nikya, which is our build-around card that we're trying to ramp into around turn 4. So on turn 5 we can have a very explosive turn with a ton of extra mana. And then we also have 3 copies of Skargan Hellkite, which is also a great curve topper in our deck. 5 mana for a 4/4 dragon with flying and riot, so when the dragon enters the battlefield, we can either give it haste or let it enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. And then for 4 mana, Hellkite deals 2 damage divided as we choose among 1 or 2 targets, but we can only activate this ability if the Hellkite has a +1/+1 counter on it, so more often than not, we will choose to put a +1/+1 counter on the Hellkite with the Riot ability, so we can use the 4 mana ability, and of course if we have a Nikya in play, we can easily activate the Hellkite's ability multiple times in the same turn, and decimate the opponent's board, and Hellkite alongside Ravager Worm are the 2 removal spells in our deck, despite being a creature-only deck. Ravager Worm being a 6 mana for 5 with Riot, so can become a 5/6 or a 4/5 with haste, and when the worm enters the battlefield, choose up to 1, the worm fights a creature we don't control, or can destroy a target land with an activated ability that is not a mana ability, so it can destroy the various memorials, can also destroy a transformed Search for Azcanta for example, or a transformed Legion's Landing, so it does have various applications, but more often than not we're just going to be finding a creature and killing it with a giant worm. And then of course our final mana sink is Hydroid Krasis, which we've already discussed, being a great curve topper in this deck, giving us a flying creature which can also be very useful against the mono blue decks, for example, and can often close out the game with 1 or 2 attacks. Now to discuss some of the omissions, we did have Rhythm of the Wild in the deck for a while, and it can be quite powerful if you draw it early, since giving all your giant creatures haste or an additional +1/+1 counter is quite useful. Synergizes nicely with Growth Chamber Guardian, since you can choose the +1/+1 counter on right, and then the Guardian can search up an additional copy right away. Plays well with Hellkite, since then you can both have haste and a +1/+1 counter and start attacking right away, but still have the ability available. And of course a hasty Nullhide Ferox is pretty scary, but it is also kind of a nombo with Nullhide Ferox and Nikya, because it's our only non-creature spell in an otherwise only creature deck, and sometimes if you have a Nikya or a Nullhide Ferox in play, you wouldn't be able to cast a Rhythm if you draw it later in the game. So at the end of the day, it got cut in favor of the Jade Light Ranger, which can kind of smooth out our draw, make sure we can keep hitting our land drops instead. And then another card we could consider is Rekindling Phoenix as a difficult remove flyer, but the double red casting cost can be a little bit prohibitive, since we won't always have double red in time. It's a little bit more manageable with the Skargan Hellkite, since by the time we cast Hellkite, we might already be able to rely on Nikya to provide double red. So if we only have a single red land, we can still make double red mana to cast our Hellkite, and Hellkite's more of a late game play anyway, whereas Phoenix we want to be able to play on curve more often than not. And then taking a look at our mana base, we've got a total of 11 untapped green sources to somewhat reliably cast our elves on turn 1. So we've got 3 basic forests alongside 4 stomping ground and 4 breeding pool, and then our final shock land is 1 steam vents, and then we've got some check lands as well, 4 hinterland harbors, 4 rootbound crag, and 2 copies of Sulphur Falls, which come into play untapped if we've got the corresponding basic land type in play. Of course, our shock lands also count as those types. And then some more basics here, 1 mountain and 1 island. So that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. And seems keepable. So this could have been a Rhythm of the Wilds. A lot happier with it being a Jade Light Ranger. This is looking like mono blue instead of Drakes. I'll just gotta hope to ramp into a Nikya here. Their spell pierces and their dive downs don't matter too much. And once we get a Hellkite down, we can start shooting down some stuff. If they have a bunch of Wizard's Retorts in hand, then it's gonna be a little trickier. Alright, there's the Obsession. Could play a Krasis for 2 here, which could be reasonable, but next turn we get to play a Hellkite. So by playing Krasis for 2, we kind of give up our big play, just to be able to hope to stop the Terramander, which may or may not be the case depending on if they have another Obsession. Dive down lets them attack into it anyway. So I think I just like playing the Jade Light here. They could also be holding an Essence Capture. Alright, I think we just want lands. Next turn we can jam Hellkite, or we could jam Nikya first. Alright, so they've got a Wizard's Retort in hand most likely. Hellkite is the most important card for us to resolve. We'll bait out with the Nikya here. Alright, that resolves. Merfolk Trickster, the Ranger, sure. Could have attacked first there if we wanted to. Alright, so this is the turn where we need to stabilize. Tempest Djinn. And they still have a wizard in play, so they can still cast their retort. I think it's just time for a big Hydroid Crisis. At least if it gets countered, we get to draw some cards. So 6, or rather 10, 11. So X equals 9. Otherwise, we could also go for Hellkite and then play a smaller Crisis, because they only have one counterspell up here. I guess Crisis for 4 and Hellkite might be better. Resolves, draw another Hellkite. Counter resolves. Alright, so maybe they don't have the retort after all. And this can attack, this can attack. Alright, we had a nice draw, ramped into Nikya, and then played some big stuff. Sure. Hellkite can go in front of Termander, Crisis in front of Jhin. Alright, change of plan. Could double block the Termander now if we wanted to. Although we kind of want to kill the 1/1 Termander while we have the chance. It's possible that attacking with Nikya last turn was kind of bad. Yeah, I think we just have to trade here. We'll have to find a solution to this other Termander situation here. Can play another Hellkite, but then we can't activate Hellkite. We could shoot down the 1/1 Termander while we've got the chance. But then we also need a blocker for the other Termander that's attacking us for 6. If we had one more life, this would be a different story. Could play Nikya and then still activates. So I guess what we could attempt is to activate the Hellkite in the opponent's turn and then deal 1 damage there, 1 damage there, but the problem is then they adapt in response. But I guess this would only be for 5. So maybe that's still okay. So we can block the 6/6 Termander and then shoot it, dealing 1 to the other Termander. If that one gets big, it's only 5. Alright, so we'll do 1 and 1. They probably have a dive down, but that would be okay. Alright, they don't. Interesting. So now they don't have a great attack. So our plan worked out. Now they play a Storm Tamer. I doubt we'll see an attack. And then the Obsession falls off. So now we're in a pretty good spot. Alright, they're attacking anyway. I'll happily trade. And now it's time to go big. Play Hellkites with a counter. Can we kill them if we give it haste? I don't think so. Alright, opponent's seen enough. Alright, hand seems decent. Yeah, Nikya is pretty impressive whenever we get her down. Also the fact that people are playing Cast Down as one of their main removal spells nowadays means she can survive. Otherwise tapping out for a 5-mana 5/5 that doesn't affect the board right away is kind of sketchy. It's mainly like Chupacabra that's painful. Hostage Taker. I think I've been liking the addition of Jade Light over Rhythm of the Wild, because her deck is pretty mana hungry, so hitting land drops is important. And now our deck is all creatures, so don't have any Nombos with Nikya or Nullhide. Up against Merfolk. Land is good. So we can play Giant Nullhide to kind of stabilize the board for a while. But I think we just want to hit our land drop so we can go Nikya into Giant Krasis and win the game. Land, another Jade Light. Don't really need. Suppose we could have, again, tapped our Druid instead of playing the land right away, and then we could have played a tap Stomping Ground instead here. Although there's a chance we wanted to Druid back on defense. Or a Trap Weaver. Tap down Jade Light. Put counter on Elite. Gets him for 2. That's okay. I think we prefer this outcome over them tapping down our Druid. And next turn, we can hopefully play Giant Krasis. What's my favorite Magic card? I've been asked this question quite a bit, and I don't really have a great response, just because there's so many great Magic cards that it's hard to choose just one. Alright, Mistbinder, sure. So they can make a 5/5 Water Trap Weaver and attack with it. We'll take it. Alright, land was a good draw. So we've got 10, 11 mana, so Krasis for 9. And Hellkite is kind of what we were looking for there. Don't think we have to attack, we'll just play it slow. We're gonna win the late game here. Favorite card from Ravnica Allegiance? Prime Speaker Vanifar is definitely a cool one. There's a few others. Ooh, Tempest Caller. That can potentially beat us here. Opponent's got a build that's pretty good against our big blockers. Water Trap Weavers, Tempest Callers. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're dead here. 11 plus 5. Well, it's too bad. Alright, got a keepable hand. Can we play a turn 3 Nullhide against the control deck? Or are they going to take it away with the Thought Erasure? It would be pretty funny. So they'll probably end up taking the Hellkite or the Growth Chamber Guardian. Nope, takes the Jade Light instead. Alright. So it's gonna be at least 4 mana before the opponent can kill the Nullhide. Ah, should have kept the Nullhide in hand for this. Alright, so we get to play Guardian and adapt. Or we can play a Hasty Hellkite, hit him for 10 in the face. I think I like Hasty Hellkite. Now they might be able to answer one of the 2 big creatures, but probably not both. So being on the play with a mana creature in this matchup was pretty key. Opponent's gonna discover, so they're pretty dead here. They might have a cast down for the Hellkite, but then they're still taking 6 at the very least. And we get to play Guardian and adapt it. Alright, never mind. Steam Vents. It's probably still gonna be a cast down here. Or maybe a Moment of Craving. Alright, up to 10, but now they're just dead on board. If they use Moment of Craving on the Hellkite, then maybe they survive for a turn. Looks reasonable. think we'll just play Druid plus tapped Steam Vents, and then next turn we can play Whisper. Alright, black-white. So maybe a heavier focus on life gain. Who knows? That was actually not a bad draw, since now we can play a Beast Whisper into a Llanowar Elves, draw a card right away. And now we're just looking for one of our payoff cards, Hellkite, Worm, Krasis. Whenever playing Nikya with mana creatures in play, make sure to tap them before tapping your lands, so the lands double up and you get more mana in the same turn to maybe double spell. Alright, we'll take it. Could block with the Llanowar Elves there potentially, but I think the extra mana for now is useful. Alright. They might have wanted to play the Vanguard before attacking there, but maybe they wanted to hide some info. Alright. So this is gonna be a Nikya. And draw a card, and we've got 4 mana remaining, which is enough for a Jade Light. Which we're happy to block with. I guess Guardian's not terrible. It's just a cheap creature that draws us a card with Beast Whisper, so it's fine. And if we put it in the graveyard, then we have fewer to find with the Guardian anyway. If we could put it on the bottom of our library, I think we would have. Alright, Pontiff. Pontiff's not bad. It's an ambitious attack. They might have a pump spell. Again, don't really care about the Jade Lights. Alright. Alright, so step 1. Play Guardian. I think. Could also play the Jade Light first, I suppose. Gives a bit more selection over our next draw. Alright, that's a lot of lands. At least now we can play an untapped one more easily. So we'll play a Growth Chamber. Alright, there's Krasis, so next turn I think we're gonna go with the Giant Krasis. For now we'll play some more Guardians. Probably could have tapped our mana a little bit better there. And green. And then, can we adapt and keep green in our mana pool is a question. Because they recently changed something to the mana pool thing where you can no longer select which mana to use. So if it doesn't give us green mana, we can no longer play the Guardian that we get with the adapt, which would be unfortunate. But we do have a Krasis in hand, so it should keep green mana in our pool. Alright. And then play another one. Beast Whisper kind of going off here as well. Alright. Not a bad turn. And our opponent's seen enough. So yeah, next turn we could have played a Krasis for how much? We had 5 lands in play, so 6 lands, so that's 12 mana plus 3 mana creatures, 15. So the Krasis for 13 mana at least, I think. Yeah, Crisis for 13 will do it. Alright, hand looks keepable. Jade Light on 3. Another interesting choice here. Against what looks like a Gates deck, Guardian's not bad since it can keep applying pressure and recover from a sweeper effect, but I think we're looking for something bigger. And the play here is going to be turn 4 Ferox, and then turn 5 we can Guardian plus Adapt if we don't find anything else. And a 6/6 Ferox can survive an early Gates Ablaze, which is pretty key. So just getting your creature bigger than they have Gates in play is pretty important in the matchup. Alright, well, this is pretty much a good game indeed. We'll play a Guardian. Adapt right away. Attack for 10. And Gates Ablaze is not going to save them. Up to 9. It's going to be Gates Ablaze for 3, or for 2 rather, since the Plaza's not a gate. And there we go. So just an early Ferox can get the job done sometimes. Sweet, and we complete a request, casting 40 creatures pretty quickly with the deck. So yeah, the Team Ramp deck's pretty fun. Can do some crazy things with Nikya in play. And then if you get to chain Beast Whispers and Nikyas and start going to town with giant Hydroid Crisis, it's a lot of fun when it all comes together. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.